Warning, playing FPL is highly addictive. It may cause stress, a loss of free time, a resentment towards friends or colleagues, and a dislike to football in general. Please, FPL responsibly.
Hey guys, and welcome back to FPL TV. We've arrived at day 3 of the official FPL price reveals, with another 5 teams' prices being released today, 11 players from each team. So let's dive straight in and see what prices FPL have got in store for us today. We start off the day with Newcastle, and following significant investment in January and then putting together a superb run of form in the second half of last season, I personally was very intrigued to discover some of their prices. As expected, their most expensive asset is Callum Wilson, and he comes in at 7.5 million. It's his injury record that will definitely have some worried, but when fit, there's no doubt he's a reliable goal scorer. And despite missing the majority of last season through injury, when called upon, he still managed to bag 8 goals in 16 starts, a very respectable tally. Now back to fitness, and with a better squad with more attacking intent behind him, I'm very excited to see just how good my FPL arch-nemesis can be in FPL this season. A trustworthy option, natural finisher, on penalties with an opening fixture at home to Nottingham Forest, a strong consideration for my starting squad certainly. The lively Alan St-Maximin notably sees a reclassification this season as he moves back to being a midfielder, just like he was 2 seasons back, and he comes in at 6.5 million. Another price I was very keen on scoping for the tune was the very impressive Brazil international Bruno, who had a superb impact on Newcastle's upturn in form last season. At a bargain 5 million last year, he was always in for a slight price increase, and although a rise to 6 was expected, I was secretly hoping he'd come in at 5.5. 6 million still a very tempting price here for someone that could turn out to be a very exciting budget asset. New goalkeeper signing, an FPL stalwart Nick Pope, gets a reasonable price of 5 million, a solid option between the sticks, no doubt. But the 5 million defensive asset that I'm very interested in here is Kieran Trippier, who will hopefully take control of many set-piece duties. He also has big targets such as Dan Burn and Botman to aim for in the box now, so corners could be a very powerful weapon for Trippier in FPL. Next up, it's last year's third place finishers Chelsea, a side that many of us I'm sure have been very excited to see their prices. It's Mason Mount who's the most expensive asset here, tied at 8 million with Timo Werner and Havertz. It's also worth noting that interestingly Havertz has now been reclassified as a forward in FPL, and with the departure of Lukaku that does make even more sense. As for Mason Mount, well 8 million for him is certainly an attractive price in my opinion, probably 0.5 million less than what I expected. When it comes to Chelsea's price reveals, I think the most anticipated prices that we were all waiting for in this Chelsea side is the 2 explosive defensive assets James and Chilwell, and in what has been a recurring pattern with these FPL price reveals, I was very surprised to see them both priced at a very appealing 6 million each. With Chilwell having spent most of last season out injured, I did think that 6 million may be a possibility for him, but I was almost certain that Reece James would come in at 0.5 million higher. Another big surprise for me here, and a price that jumped straight off the page, was Edouard Mendy between the sticks, who didn't just drop by 0.5 million from last year, but instead has dropped an entire 1 million down to a very cheap price of 5. Looking back at his output from last season, where he only managed 130 points, it does kind of make sense, but there's no doubting that 5 million is still a very appealing price here. And with the likes of Alisson at 5.5 and Mendy now at 5, it looks like we'll be seeing a lot more top 6 keepers in our FPL considerations this season. So a lot of value in this Chelsea defence it seems, but it is worth remembering that Rudiger and Christensen have both left the club now, and Rudiger in particular will be a very big hole to fill. Next up for day 3's price reveals, let's take a look at the 11 players released for West Ham. Understandably, it's Hammers talisman Jared Bowen that receives a huge price hike and comes in as West Ham's most expensive asset at 8.5 million. The big price increase here wasn't particularly a surprise. However, given how FPL have been pricing other players so far, I am a tad surprised to see him at 8.5 rather than 8 million. We've seen the likes of Saka, Mason Mount, Luis Diaz and Foden all come in at that round price of 8 million, so considering those prices, I expected Bowen to be in the same bracket. He did, however, reach that incredible landmark of surpassing 200 points in FPL last season, so 8.5 is still a fair valuation in my opinion, and his importance to West Ham is indisputable with no concern of rotation like the others. After finishing as the 4th highest scoring forward in FPL last season, Michail Antonio gets a small price increase of 0.5 up to 7.5 million. He ended the season with 10 goals and 140 FPL points, but it's worth remembering that remarkably half of those goals all came in the opening 6 game weeks, as did a big chunk of his FPL returns. In what was a very underwhelming second half of the season for Antonio FPL-wise, I'm guessing he'll be fairly low owned come game week 1. As per usual, there is some fairly attractive value options here in defence, with both Cresswell and Kufal being priced at 5 and 4.5 respectively. Cresswell has often been a very handy option in FPL due to his set-piece duties and has generally come in at 5.5 in the past, so can certainly offer us value here at this lower valuation. The next team whose prices were revealed today was our second promoted team, Bournemouth, so let's look at what's on offer at the Cherries. It's unsurprisingly frontman Dominic Solanke who comes in as the most expensive Cherries asset, with him getting a budget 6 million valuation, slightly less than that of Mitrovic, and rightly so in my opinion. Solanke played a huge part in Bournemouth's promotion bid, bagging a very impressive 29 goals in the Championship last season, finishing second behind only the Serbian. 29 goals is nothing to be scoffed at. However, with Mitrovic comfortably outscoring him with an absurd 43, I think it's correct from FPL to have priced him a little bit cheaper here. Given the value that we've been gifted elsewhere by FPL so far, for example, Chelsea defenders like Chilwell and James being priced the same at 6 million, it's difficult to see Solanke being a popular option and offering us as good of value as those. But he should at least be a consistent starter who should chip in with some goals if you're really in the market for a cheap forward. As for Philip Billing, who made the Championship team of the season last year, well, he comes in at 5.5 million, as do his midfield counterparts Christie, Brooks and Anthony. Impressively, Billing did manage to hit double figures for both goals and assists last season, so perhaps one to monitor for his outstanding aerial ability and importance to the team. Will Bournemouth assets be high up on the shopping list for many FPL managers? Well, probably not to begin with, even less so considering their very difficult opening set of fixtures. But keep an eye out for their very talented youngsters, Jadon Anthony and Jordan Zamora, who were both very impressive on the left-hand side for Bournemouth last season. Their young goalkeeper, Mark Travers, was also ever present for Bournemouth last year, and Bournemouth did notably keep the most clean sheets of any team in the Championship with 21. At the very young age of 23, Travers can only improve, and will certainly at least rack up some save points along the way. The last team for day 3 of the FPL price reveals is Southampton, with their main man and set-piece specialist Ward-Prowse, understandably the most expensive of their squad, joint top with forward Che Adams at 6.5 million. Last season, Southampton were a fairly underwhelming side in FPL terms, with only those two, Adams and Ward-Prowse, even reaching 100 points. Ward-Prowse did it comfortably on 159, and second-placed Adams only just got there on 103. A very poor FPL outing for the rest. At first look, it is only really the talismanic Ward-Prowse that I'd have in my considerations at all personally, and it'll probably stay that way until after the season begins and we've had some time to assess Southampton further. They do have some difficult opening fixtures to begin the season anyway, so perhaps it is best to wait and see. For the price reveals that we've seen over the past few days, Southampton prices are certainly some of the cheapest we've seen overall, with all the defence across the board given a 4.5 million valuation. Kyle Walker-Peters on his day has been known to be a decent asset at times, but with only 8 clean sheets to the name last season, there's probably better value elsewhere right now. Romeu oddly gets a price increase this season up to 5 million, whilst Redmond, who only managed 1 Premier League goal last season, is a 5.5 midfielder. Southampton under Hasenhüttl have been known to be quite streaky with their form, so if they do manage to go on a good run, then who knows, perhaps then they'll come a bit more into our thinking. But for now at least, it's only Ward-Prowse that would be considered an option on my part. So that's all the prices from day 3 of the official FPL price reveals. If you did enjoy the video, then I ask you to please support the channel by leaving a like and most importantly getting subscribed. You can also hit that notification bell so you'll then be notified when part 4 goes live tomorrow. Tomorrow will surely be the final day of these price reveals, and then perhaps the following day, on Tuesday, we'll get the full game launch. Exciting times. If you're not up to date with the other price reveals so far, you can also watch part 1 and part 2 of this mini-series if you haven't already, shown on the screen now. FPL responsibly, and I'll see you all tomorrow for the 4th and final day of price reveals.